Welcome to part two of our three-part podcast series on self-portrait photography. Let's get into it. Maybe some quick intros in case anyone hasn't watched the first episode. Tell us about yourself, Irene.
Yeah, my name is Irene, and I'm a boudoir photographer in Hamilton, Ontario. Melissa and I started this podcast in order to inform people about the beauty that is self-portraits. Now, back to you.
I'm Melissa. I'm a self-portrait photographer, and I'm currently in Zagreb. And I try to teach people about taking self-portraits for themselves and using it for self-discovery and exploration. So that's kind of my mission. All right, let's talk about what we need to get started, like bare bones kind of level. Do people need expensive equipment?
Do people need expensive equipment? No, they don't. So Melissa and I will both tell you guys that you can literally just start out with your smartphone. It depends on what stage you're at in your self-portrait journey. If you're just starting out, use your phone. If you want to delve deeper, if you're interested in photography, if you've never done it before and you really want to take it to the next level, then get a camera. However, I use a Sony a7 III. It's a very hefty piece of equipment and it's very expensive. I also use it for my business, so that's why it makes sense that I've got that. You can definitely invest in, lower investment kind of cameras and get the same effect.
Yes.
What kind of camera do you use?
I have Canon.
Okay.
I've been a Canon girl forever. But I have the 5D Mark IV,
Okay.
which is kind of like the last of that
Series.
5D series before they went mirrorless. And then I mostly use the 24 to 70
Me
lens
too. Yeah.
for everything.
Yep.
It's so versatile. It just every space it works.
Other equipment that we would recommend to have along with your phone or camera is a tripod. This is $30 off Amazon. I have two different tripods, one for my camera, one for my phone. Melissa will show you hers.
This one is it's actually like a travel tripod. It's the Manfrotto B3. So it's really easy to hold down and take with me if I'm going to an Airbnb or going to some other location.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty good. And then I also just have this attachment for my phone that works with this tripod, so I can use my phone or my camera if I'm, whatever I'm feeling.
Yeah, tripods are a lifesaver. If you do not want to make the investment into that, no worries. You're just gonna have to MacGyver a couple things. So sometimes I will put my phone up on my windowsill, or I will, there's the cat playing, yeah. Or I will put my phone up on a countertop or something like that. Now, not the most ideal. What you do want generally is a tripod.
So if I'm using my phone, I will often just set it up on whatever surface is available depending on where I am. I've used chairs or tables or windowsills. Yeah, I think the most important thing that we're really trying to communicate here is that the gear does not actually matter as much if your purpose for doing self-portraits is exploring and discovering and capturing, some element of yourself that you would like to capture. And that experience in itself is valuable, whether you need, a quality photo to share somewhere or not. Okay, so we kind of got gear covered. What about lighting? Because I know that is a big one that people worry about.
I am mostly a natural light photographer, and natural light can get you so far. So one really big tip that I want to give is when you're taking self-portraits, always make sure there is one source of light to the side of you, okay? Angled. Number two, if you want a silhouette photo, Position the light behind you. We will put an example in for that as well because that's very helpful to know.
Okay, so if you have a source of light and you want to be creative with it, what if you want like a moody photo or like something darker?
Do that. So I would generally make sure there's less light coming in, so using a curtain. If you want to stray away from the natural light, then I would go ahead and wait until, it's like evening time or whatever and use a table lamp or something of the sort. Never, ever, ever, dear gosh, never use overhead lights at night or anytime because that casts shadows that are just really unflattering on everything. So again, one source of light to the side of you and not you will experiment yourself to see where it looks best on you, but no overhead lights and use a table lamp.
It's always running in the back of my mind, like I'm keeping an eye out for interesting light.
Yes.
And I might not have any plan in mind, but like for example, on my Instagram, there are these black and white, like kind of striped looking photos. And
which I love.
Those photos would not exist if I hadn't seen the way the light came through the blinds at night. And so like that was just from a street lamp that was outside. And I'd never shot with that kind of light before. I had no idea, what to even expect or like what would come out of my camera. So that was just experimentation and just being open to what I might see and what, sparks interest for me.
So for me personally, it depends on what I'm in the mood for. If I'm taking a quick nude, like if I literally looked at myself or like I was changing and I was like, oh, like, damn, I look pretty good. Or if I want to just like send a quick nude to someone, I will just use my phone. And sometimes it can take me as little as 5 minutes. However, on a more creative shoot, I will spend probably 1 to 2 hours. I don't love to go to the 2-hour mark because my attention span tends to dwindle and I get tired and I get hungry and I get grumpy. So like literally by the end of it, I'm like, all right, I'm done. Like this is it. The thing that takes the most time realistically is setting up my tripod with my camera, finding which angle that the lighting looks best in and that I look best in that light. Once I know what pose I'm doing, I get in the pose, I hit the shutter, and there you go. How about you?
And I find it too, like when you're setting up your camera and the tripod, it's not just like, here, I've set it and it's good. Like you're doing kind of test shots in between and like checking, you're like actually taking self-portraits as part of that setup process. I would actually say that I'm a little bit opposite with the time that I would use for a more conceptual shoot with my camera. I think 1 hour is actually too short for me. It's almost never going to be just 1 hour. I like to give myself like 4 hours.
Whoa.
Or be prepared to have 4 hours. Not necessarily that I'm like using the full 4 hours, but actually to just really take my time. So like I have the snacks on hand, I have the water, like I'm taking breaks in between and just sort of like reviewing the shots I've taken and seeing if there's anything else I want to do. But then as I'm doing it, these other things come up and I'm like, okay, let's try that. And then something else comes up and I'm like, oh, wait, what about this? And so all of that sort of like in the moment inspiration actually just like extends the time. But like that striped series that I did, that was totally unplanned. It was just like one night I was like, oh, I have energy. I feel inspired. Let me just do it. And it was like 30 minutes.
Wow.
And it took like, I don't know, 50 photos. Liked 40 of them.
Yeah, amazing. That's a good ratio. Throughout the process, like it is a process and it is a technical process. One thing that I feel like I've noticed has very much improved is my patience. So before I would get very frustrated if things didn't go my way, and sometimes shoots would just be generally throwaways, and sometimes I would only get like 3 photos out of, let's say, 40, and I was it was frustrating. But the more I practiced, the more I did it, now I know my full process. I know, I turn on my music, I set up my tripod, I pick like a spot, I conceptualize a pose, and then I go. And I think that's where a lot of my time has also been shaved down for myself. That's how I shoot. I'm a quick, let's go, go, go. So patience is definitely something that I've taken away throughout this whole like technical process. And it's very good because I'm a very impatient person.
I think that's a good point too about just like at first it can feel overwhelming because you don't have your own process.
Yes.
And sure, like we can say, here's my process and step by step, but like that may not work for you.
Well, and then we're even saying, right, like for me, it takes 1 to 2 and you're like, oh, I give myself 4, right? So everyone has a different process.
And speaking of process, there is another stage to all of this technical stuff that we haven't talked about yet, which is what do you do after you've taken the photo?
For phone images, I usually put them into Lightroom because you can batch edit, and that's really helpful. And then for any sort of boudoir-esque camera photos, I bring it into Lightroom and then bring it into Photoshop if it needs any additional editing.
I also mostly use Lightroom, especially for any camera photos. I'm using Lightroom. I rarely need to use Photoshop, but it is something I have used on occasion to, if there's, something more more complicated I need to do. But I also use Lightroom Mobile pretty much for all my phone photos. I'll use Lightroom Mobile. So Lightroom Mobile is free. I think there are some premium features that only come if you have the subscription, but you can do quite a lot with just the free app. Another one that is free is Snapseed. I am not sure if it's on iOS because it's a Google app, but it is free and it is actually pretty robust in terms of mobile editing. So I'll just use that to play around. And then Lightroom, because that's paid, there's an alternative called Darktable. So I haven't used that one personally, but I've read a lot about it and I know that people recommend it.
Realistically, at the end of the day, with phone images, you don't need to edit them. If you want to learn how to, like adjust for exposure and, do different things with your contrasts and your tone curve and stuff like that, I do recommend looking into it and screwing around with it a little bit. I do want to make quick mention of filters. So I use filters on Instagram. I use them on TikTok religiously. I feel as though the revolution of filters has really given us body dysmorphia. And we are no longer looking at our faces and going, yeah, like, whoa, that's awesome. We look at our face and we go, I'd rather like put a filter on. Or if you're not wearing makeup, you go, just throw on a filter and then it'll look good. Now, if that's something that you really need in your heart of hearts and it really helps your self-confidence, do it. However, I do want to make mention of just trying to go through the self-portrait journey and trying to separate yourself from the filters and being able to recognize yourself without any filters as beautiful, because in real life, this is what we look like, and a filter does have its time and place. Agreed, 100%. I won't talk smack about them, but they can have a very negative effect on our self-perception.
Yes. I find also, like, I have tried filters, and they always, like, eliminate all of my freckles. So it's, like, a totally, like, smooth complexion. I'm like, oh, that is not what I look like.
Yeah.
Another thing, too, with editing is I always notice like my under eye area in photos,
Me too.
and I often feel the urge to like edit them out, because it would look better, quote unquote,
Yeah.
in the image. But I'm like, actually, that's the face I see every single day. Every time I look in the mirror, that is what I see. So I don't want myself to be used to seeing myself without them and think that that's better. That is just part of my own self-portrait journey.
Yes.
With the editing process and all of the tools that are available, like it would be so easy to just like, they're gone.
Oh,
But
110%.
Yeah.
And, you know, I like how you brought that up, you know, that's your own self-portrait journey for myself as well. So I struggle really hard with embracing my side profile. That is something that has given me anxiety since I grew into my face. It's something, it's like a crescent moon looking kind of thing. Using self-portraits, I have shot different angles of my face. Now, some of them they will not see the light of day, but others where I was like, oh shit, like you can kind of see my side profile. I look at it and I have started to embrace it. And I try to shoot for that now, where I can see my side profile and look at it and not cringe in the way that I used to. And that's something that's so important to me because this is the face that I've got, you know. If I want to change it, I can. That's an option. However, it's also really good to kind of accept yourself throughout that process so that, you know, if you do want to change anything, it's not because, oh my God, I can't even look at myself. It's because, you know, I think that would enhance my features. I think that would look great on me. I think I'll look better. Awesome. Has definitely helped to embrace that aspect of myself. And I could put a filter on. I could liquefy, you know, because there's an effect on Photoshop. I could liquefy different parts of my face and enhance things if I really wanted to. You know?
And I think this is actually so, it's such a big part of like the technical conversation because
yes,
as you're taking self-portraits, you're using the angles and you're using the lighting and you're using all of these things that will create an image of you. And so like in your example, your how you position your camera is going to determine how much of your profile you're seeing. And you decide that in the moment of like, okay, how much do I want to see? Or like,
yes.
And with lighting too, like I know that some lighting is going to accentuate my under eye bag.
Yeah.
And so I work that into my process.
Yes.
And those are just things that I'm aware of.
Exactly. And, you know, there was a reason why we mentioned earlier about overhead lighting, because it accentuates all the things that you should not have accentuated in order to feel confident about yourself. I don't think anyone is going to stand under overhead lighting and be like, wow, I look great. You know, and if you do, props to you, amazing. But, you know, it casts shadows because you have to think of it in an artistic way, right? There's your brow bone that, you know, casts shadows here. There's going to be under your chin, it's going to cast shadows here. There's going to be weird shadows like on your boobs and on everywhere else, and it's just not vibey. So yes, throughout the whole process, these are things that we think about in order to get to the end result of a good photo. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you have picked up on one thing or another, and if we've convinced you to start your own self-portrait journey, then amazing. But our next episode is going to be even more interesting, even better. The grand finale, grand slam, we are going to be teaching you how to pose in boudoir photos. So what we're going to be doing is I am going to be showing you guys how to shoot on a camera during daylight. And then Melissa is going to be showing you guys how to shoot on a phone in the evening time. So that's how we're going to kind of section it off. Things are obviously interchangeable, but that's just how we're going to split it. And I'm very excited for you guys to see it. So stay tuned and we'll see you next time. Bye.